Greetings, my name is Kerry and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you the next in my 5 Faves series, and this is actually based on a request. I mentioned, I think it was in one of my haul videos about Autobuy authors, and someone commented asking me to talk a bit more about who some of my Autobuy authors are and what that means. So I thought I would frame it for today as one of my 5 fave videos. So I'm going to talk about 5 of my favourite authors who are Autobuy authors for me. There are loads more on this list, so I might do several more rounds of this. And also I have some authors who are auto-read authors, so I don't necessarily go out and buy their books, but I will try and get copies of them to read, like from the library, for example. And so there's a slight difference there. So I might make another video talking about the difference between auto-buy and auto-read and what that means to me, and suggest some of the authors that are on that list as well. But for now, I'm just going to talk about some of my favourite Autobuy authors. So this doesn't necessarily mean that I already own all of their books, because I don't have loads of money. It usually generally means that I'm trying to collect all of their back catalogue, and if they're an author who's still currently writing, it would probably mean that I would be pre-ordering their books when they're announced, unless they're coming out in hardback and it's really expensive, and then I might wait for the paperback, depends on if it's like carrying on a series or that sort of thing. But for the most part, these are generally authors that I would either be pre-ordering their works as they're coming out, or I'd be trying to buy up all their back catalogue of books. Generally when I see them in second-hand shops or charity shops, or I will buy them online when I find them at a discount. Sometimes it will mean that I will buy their books for full price, brand new, but not always, because as I say, don't have loads of money on a budget. So yeah, so it doesn't necessarily mean I own all of their books at the moment, but it's sort of, I'm trying to get to that point of where I've own and read everything that they've got. It also means that I don't mind buying more of their books even if I've still got ones that I haven't read yet, because it generally means that I've read enough of this author to know that I'm going to enjoy anything that they write. I feel that comfortable with their works that I know I'm going to love them when they come out. And as I mentioned, this is not a complete list of all the authors that are Autobuy authors for me, because there were too many to put into one video, I think, probably. And I thought it was easier just to break it down, and I'll do every couple of months I'll release another list of maybe another 5. So I'll do it as a sub-series of my 5 Faves series. Every so often I'll tell you about 5 more of my favourite Autobuy authors. So without any further ado, let's get onto the list. The first 2 on this list are ones where they're favourite authors who are no longer with us, so they're no longer producing works, but they were very prolific, so I'm trying to collect as many of their books as possible and buying them up when I find them in second-hand shops generally, or in particular. So the first one is Agatha Christie. So I have copies of all of the Marple canon at the moment. This is actually the most recent one I've bought because I had it in omnibus form, and I bought it just in case I need to take it on holiday with me and I didn't want to take the massive omnibus. So I own the entire Marple canon, and once I finished all the Marple books, I'm gonna start on the Poirot ones, so I'll be buying them up as I get to read them. I have a handful of them, but not all of them. And then she wrote a number of standalones, and she wrote another series, the Tommy and Tuppence series as well, so I'll be working my way through buying all of her books as and when I can. When I see them in charity shops, or when I've got to that point in the series that I need the next book, I will look for it, usually secondhand online. So there's a great secondhand website called Abe Books. I think they're affiliated with Amazon, but they're a bit like Amazon Marketplace, but you tend to find books a bit cheaper, and a lot of small independent bookshops actually use them to help sell off secondhand books. So that's where I got this copy from. Actually, I got it from a community interest bookshop where the profits go into the local community, so it was a great way to get old books, really. Yeah, so Agatha Christie is an author I kind of rediscovered last year. I had read a few of her books when I was younger and not really thought too much about it, and then my dad gave me a whole load of his, and I was reading them and kind of enjoying them, and then not keeping them, and I actually really wish that I kept all the ones I read, and I'm now having to start rebuying them, although to be fair, my editions are really old and knackered because most of them have been my dad's, and most of them we'd bought secondhand. And actually the first book that I read and kept was Murder on the Orient Express, and after that I was like, actually grew in appreciation for her writing and for the genius of it, so I'm now trying to collect all of her books. And I don't really mind what editions I have, so they're all a bit of a jumble, but I do love some of these old school covers that are just a little bit weird. The second one is similar. It's another author who is no longer with us, so she's no longer writing books, but she is one of my all-time favourite authors, and that's Daphne du Maurier. So Rebecca, you probably heard me talk about, is my all-time favourite book, and I have read maybe half a dozen other books by Daphne du Maurier, and I own about another half a dozen. Usually I try and buy them when I see them secondhand, or you can see on this I've got this from The Works, which is a discount, not only bookshop, they sell a lot of other stuff, but it's all very much knocked down prices, so I've got 3 for £5 of these. I haven't actually bought any Daphne du Maurier for a while because I'm trying to, well, I did buy a anniversary edition of Rebecca last year, but I'm trying to read through the ones that I have got before I buy any more, just so I make sure I don't double up on any. And I'm not actually sure how many more of her books I haven't bought yet, so I need to have a look into that and try and get the rest of them. This is one I'm going to read next. I'm going to probably take this on holiday with me. Yeah, but she is my all-time favourite author, really, probably jointly with C.S. Lewis, so I really want to read everything that she's written. And I found out, I think I've talked about this on my channel before as well actually, found out last autumn that she had a sister who also wrote books, so once I've got all of her books I will try and buy all of her sister's books. Her sister was called Angela, I think. Then the next three are authors who are still alive, still writing, and authors, they're quite different styles of books, but all ones that I very much enjoy. So next on my list is an author who, after I read her first book, I knew that I would probably want to read everything she puts out. So she's released 2 books so far, and that is Angie Thomas. And so I read The Hate You Give about a year ago. It had been out a little while when I picked it up, and I got this copy. I just really loved it. I'd not read anything like it before. So I think I gave both this and On the Come Up 4 stars, because there were a few things about the style of writing that I didn't entirely enjoy, but after reading this one, as soon as I heard On the Come Up was coming out, I had that on pre-order, and because in the UK her books tend to come out straight away in paperback, I think I will always pre-order them, because she's such an important voice in literature at the moment, and particularly in YA literature. This book has been at the top of the New York Times bestsellers list for several years now, I think. So, I mean, pretty much since it came out. I have got the film as well. I haven't quite got around to watching it yet. I just think the stories that Angie Thomas is telling are so important for the world at the moment, and so I really want to support her as an author, and one way of doing that is by pre-ordering her books. So she's really fantastic, and I follow her on Twitter as well, and just, yeah, she's good people. The next author is the one that probably actually introduced the term Autobuy author to me. I think she's the first author that I consciously named as an Autobuy author, and that is Laini Taylor, who wrote the Strange the Dreamer duology. This is the second book in that duology, Muse of Nightmares, and she also wrote the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. I read Strange the Dreamer as part of there was a big buddy read along of it last autumn, and on the strength of Strange the Dreamer, it was a couple of weeks before Muse of Nightmares was released, and I enjoyed Strange the Dreamer so much that I immediately pre-ordered this one. While I was waiting for this to arrive, I read Daughter of Smoke and Bone and enjoyed it so much that I borrowed that from the library, and actually I borrowed Strange the Dreamer from the library and then straight away bought my own copy of it. And I'd borrowed Daughter of Smoke and Bone from the library, and as soon as I finished it I ordered the box set of those 3 books. I haven't actually read the second and third ones of that trilogy yet, but just on the strength of the 2 books that I'd read, I immediately went out and bought the rest of those series. I think she has a few other books that I haven't got yet that I'm going to try and get, but again I want to try and actually read all the ones I've got first before I do let myself buy any more, just because my TBR is so massive. I do need to try and cut it down. So at the moment I'm not necessarily actively buying up all of these books if I know I've got ones to read by that author already, but the intention is there that I want to own everything that she writes, because her writing style is just so beautiful. Really happy that I did pre-order this one, and I don't usually buy hardbacks, but I do really enjoy this edition. I just think is beautiful. The final one on today's list of Autobuy authors is a slightly different category. This is Kate Morton, who writes historical fiction, but always with a bit of a twist. So all of her books take place over multiple timelines. So there's usually a historical one, and there's usually a modern day one, and there's maybe one or two in between, and all the stories overlap and interweave. This one is the only one I actually have in hardback, and I actually got this second hand. Some of the others I bought them new, and this one was one that actually, when I first started it, I wasn't enjoying it. It was only about halfway through where there was a massive twist that I really grew to love it, which just goes to show that sometimes you just need to persevere with books. And that's, I think, part of what an Autobuy author is for me, is that I trust them. And so I could have given up on this book, but because I love Kate Morton as an author, I kept going, and it was worth it. The payout was worth it. I own most of her books. I haven't bought her most recent one because I was able to get it from the library, and hopefully I will get that when it comes out in paperback, because I generally prefer reading paperbacks, and they're generally a bit cheaper. But I did manage to get it from the library straight away. That's called The Clockmaker's Daughter, and I read that last autumn as well. So she's definitely an Autobuy author for me, that if I see her books, I will buy them. And actually I don't own a couple of others that, again, because I managed to read them from the library, but I do want to buy them at some point. It's just having the money to do it. So again, generally it will be if I see it in a charity shop, I'll pick up a copy. Although one day when I have endless space and endless money, I will go back. I have a list on Goodreads, actually, you can have a look at it if you want, which is called Buy Later, which is all the books that I borrow from the library or from people that I want to eventually have my own copies of. So if you're curious, you can go and check that out. My Goodreads details will be in the description box below. But yeah, Kate Morton, if you haven't checked her out, she's a really brilliant historical fiction writer. Her stories are so complex and so beautifully woven together that, yeah, it's just really breathtaking, and she just has a really lovely lyrical writing style as well. So that is it for today. I think I probably will do more in this series about Autobuy authors, and maybe we'll do a bit of a discussion video about the difference between Autobuy and auto-read authors for me as well. So if you're interested in seeing that, please do let me know. Let me know who some of your Autobuy authors are. Are there authors that you just have to have every book that they've written, who you go out of your way to buy copies of their works? Please do let me know that. Yeah, have a chat to me down in the comments. Please follow me on my social media as well. As I mentioned, that will always be in the description box below, and please think about subscribing if you haven't already. It really does mean a lot to me to know that people want to hear what I have to say. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.